I know I'm doing this live stream right from my phone. I'm not doing it on StreamYard right now because I just had to hurry up and jump on and talk about this topic that's going on. Hold on one second. Hope you all are blessed and safe. It is, they say, hotter than July. That's the phrase, but nothing is hotter and warmer than August. I can just tell you that much. August, it is too dang on hot. We are closer to the sun, actually, but here's the interesting part. We are in the final quarter of 2026, meaning, ladies and gentlemen, we are on this trip almost completely finished with 2027. It is not that long from now that we're finished with him. We got one like in. Let's see if I can get some more likes on this. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to just jump on and just mention something. It has been a while since I've last talked with everybody. I've been dealing with a lot with family illness and sickness that's taken over. So I have not had a chance really to talk with everybody, like discussing it. I'm going to go outside. This is not going to be a long live stream, especially, Lord, since I am outside and it is too hot for this shit. Y'all can see it's extremely warm. I should say hot to say the least. But I want to come on and talk because Keith D is being charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder in the shooting death of Tupac Shakur. This was almost 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I was 10 years old. 30 years ago, I was actually, let me just 10 years old, and I remember watching, I think Mike Tyson was fighting Bruce Sheldon that night. And I remember Tupac, Denzel, Suge Knight, I think Jim Carrey was even in the audience. Mike Tyson's fights were big. All celebrities would turn up, just like how they did with Floyd Mayweather when he was fighting. You would see celebrities over at the MGM Grand with Tyson. This was when Mike just got out of jail, got out of prison. And he and Tupac actually became good friends, if I'm not mistaken. And so I remember, though, that night when Tupac was murdered, or was shot, rather, that was a Saturday night, and that Sunday we found out about it. It was all over the news. It was on MTV News, and of course a week later because Tupac didn't pass, he eventually did a little bit a week later, which was even more devastating news. And I remember MTV playing a marathon of his music videos. What's going on, Billy Bales? What's going on, Vanessa? Hello, hello. So now we have somebody, and of course, what happened that night, for those of a lot of people I think are familiar with it, Pac was at the MGM after the fight. He and Suge Knight got into it with another rival, I believe a Crip named Orlando Anderson, who was there at the MGM. I believe this was over a gold chain that he had supposedly snatched from a member of Tupac's entourage or Suge Knight's entourage sometime before in another, not in Las Vegas, but I think out in Los Angeles when that happened. And there's surveillance video footage of him beating the guy up, and then they walk off. And Pac, of course, is traveling with Suge Knight down the Sunset Strip with their entourage, and he ends up getting shot at. So, Keith D, and how he plays a role in this, had been giving interviews as of late on Vlad TV. I think he's even been on the Art of Dialogue. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's written a book. He's been running his mouth and talking about how he played a role in Tupac's death and orchestrated it, basically giving the okay to Orlando Anderson, who is deceased, supposedly. And I've been hearing about Orlando Anderson being the shooter for years. That was in. They had been talking about this, like several years ago, especially after when Biggie passed, when Biggie was killed. They mentioned this and so forth. And Keith D eventually, though, about 10 years ago, a little bit earlier than that, probably later than that, he actually started sitting down with Vlad. He started doing interviews about how he played a role with this. He did a book on this about how he had to give the okay on it, my understanding. And as such, because there's no statute of limitations on homicides, i.e., murder, and you're running your mouth, and yes, I understand he got paid for it. That's what his defense is, and it's all alleged because do I know where the truth lies necessarily? No, we have an idea. I guess all of us have our assumptions, but this is why they say loose, the old saying, loose lips shank ships. He has hurt himself apparently by running his mouth, and regardless of what the reasons are, and I'm sure his defense is going to be, I got paid to do these. These were stories I told, and he used money. He needed the money, obviously. The city of Las Vegas is hearing this stuff. This was a cold case from 30 years ago. Interesting enough, they're expecting the trial to last 6 weeks, and if it's going to last 6 weeks from now, that's going to coincide, and this is the interesting part, with the actual 30th anniversary of the shooting and then eventual death of Tupac. So I believe that is symbolically significant. I think that's the idea or something that the prosecution was going for. Now, I think the prosecution, because they bear the burden of proof, they have a hard time, are going to have a hard time proving every element beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a possibility because, keep in mind, most, if not all, the witnesses that were involved are either, like Orlando Anderson, they're deceased. Memories fade over time, so who's going to remember what is going to be problematic. Suge Knight is a witness, but Suge Knight is the type of person, he's not going to rat. So he's on the witness list. The governor of Nevada, the governor actually, who was a cop at the time, I believe he's a witness, and I think even the mayor, if I'm not mistaken. So the state has several witnesses they're going to bring up. But again, the police officers, if they were there and responded to the scene, they're not going to know, obviously, all in what happened because the police respond to crime. They don't actually see it when it happens. And so what people can take from this, and with Keith D, number one, remember that if you are involved, ladies and gentlemen, in a homicide, it can come back 10, 15, 30, 40, it doesn't even matter. You're still breathing. You can still be put on the hook for that. They're Nazi war criminals who are getting caught at age 100 and still being dragged into tribunal courts up in Europe for their role in the Holocaust. So there's no statute of limitations on homicide generally. Loose lips sink ships. You have a right against self-incrimination. All American citizens, at least when they're accused of a crime, they do that. And I think Keefe D's thinking, and part of his argument is that when he did the deal for the book and documented this, he was claiming, and I listened to his interview with the newscaster, that he was not only offered money, but they gave him a story, and that's all I was doing. I was giving a story. But a lot of the stuff he was saying was so detailed, and plus Orlando Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, is Keefe D's nephew. So that plays a factor in that. And the jurors, I'm sure, are going to have to think about this. The other thing is that you have to remember as well is that when you give a confession or statement, everything now, and a lot of people do it for clout, people are doing it for attention, the internet is undefeated. The internet is essentially a forensic blueprint to track people. So when you're giving statements, when you're on Vlad or you're on Art of Dialogue or let's say Club Shay Shay, whatever podcast, once it's on the internet, it's there for life. It is a tattoo that can't come off. They may delete the channels, they may hide the videos, but the video is still there. So I don't know why people do it. Obviously, it's for clout, it's for money. I would not consider, no matter how much money someone offered me, I would not give any type of statement or story linking myself if I were innocent to a murder, especially a high profile murder like that, because everybody has been trying to wonder who killed Tupac, who killed Biggie for the last 30 years, something that's remained unsolved. And a lot of people, especially the families, want closure. And the sad part about this, too, is that if this were, I've heard about this guy years ago, why this wasn't brought up when Mother Shakur, Afeni Shakur, was alive. Um, of course, there's stories, there's books by a guy by the name of John Pasayach, who wrote a book about the FBI's war against Tupac and other black nationals, which is very compelling because I even think that there's something bigger. Just like with Dr. King's assassination and JFK's assassination, there is obviously more to the story. I don't believe, and I know for a fact, James Earl Ray and Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill Dr. King and President Kennedy, respectively. I got to come inside. It's too hot. I wanted to talk with y'all out there. But this is obviously a big trial. It's high profile. And I see you saying hi, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so, what do you all think of this case? Do you think that this is going to be something that results in a guilty conviction or not guilty conviction? Do you think there are going to be more people that are going to be arrested? Uh, some people have asked me or haven't have asked me that or are curious. Let me just say, if this, I think it's going to be hard unless some new information comes out that you can get other people arrested, because remember, a lot of the key witnesses, a lot of the key participants, some of them are no longer with us. And some of them also, like Suge Knight, don't want to, the streets are not talking. He's one of those people that doesn't want to talk. He even said he saw the shooter, but never said anything. Now, I can't figure out if someone were to take my best friend's life, one of my actual artist, on the main artist on my label, that cost me money, why I wouldn't want to punish the person or have the person brought to justice. And I understand it's about street stuff and so forth. I get all of that. And that comes in. But for the life of me, if something like that had happened to a friend of mine, someone I trusted, someone I loved, I certainly wouldn't rest until I got justice on it. But nevertheless, he's not talking about, although he's a witness, and he may be compelled, obviously. And here's another thing. When you're given a subpoena to testify, now prosecutors can call their case how they want, as can defense attorneys, whatever witnesses they want. A subpoena just means you're put on notice to testify. That's another legal thing I want to mention. They may or may not call you, but if you are called, you're put under what's notice, and that if you fail to answer when you're called, you can actually be charged with contempt of court. And that's probably another reason why they want, and obviously I don't know how much contempt you can get for Suge Knight, because Suge Knight is doing time on a murder charge and an attempted murder, if I'm not mistaken, that he's been sitting in jail on for the last, I believe it's been 10 years since he's been in jail, if I'm not mistaken. And could you imagine, though, your Keith D, like what he's thinking? I have that thumbnail with his mouth open like that, like, how the hell did I do this shit? What did I do to myself? He's not taking a plea deal, which is interesting because he says, I didn't do anything and I'm not guilty, but he has, from my understanding, he is terminally sick. From what they gathered, he's actually fighting cancer. So He probably figures if they think I did it, let it play out. This reminds me, ladies and gentlemen, of what happened in the 90s when John Gotti got convicted on RICO conspiracy charges and ended up doing life in prison for the assassination of Big Paul Castellano, who was the heir to the Gambino crime family. And Gotti had ordered and orchestrated the assassination of Paul Castellano with the help of Sammy the Bull and others. And the problem with him was, like Keefe D, he kept running his mouth. He kept talking about stuff. A lot of the mafia bosses, if you think about it, those that didn't go to prison, like Mario Lansky, like Bugsy Siegel and Charles Nicoletti, although they ever got arrested, may have gotten arrested, they never did life in prison or anything like that because they didn't. Now, of course, Ben Siegel got killed, but they kept their mouths closed. They didn't incriminate themselves. And he did this, obviously, it seems, for attention. And John Gotti kept running his mouth. And they had tapes. The FBI was listening. And he was he actually had beaten several charges before. But he got too cocky and confident. They caught him on other stuff. And that's how, and keep in mind, you can get rearrested on different, as long as it's not for the same charge and occurrence, even if you get, of course, double jeopardy can play a factor, but if it's not involving, especially if it's not involving the same occurrence and transaction. But make sure, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to be talking about stuff that can incriminate you, just remember, number one, also have your attorneys with you. I would say don't do anything like that that can incriminate you. Make sure you have if you are going to give a book, you have an airtight immunity deal, which I think the prosecution was able to go around this because he may have had a deal with, and I'm waiting to see what the evidence comes out, but he may have had an agreement with his attorney and some other members of law enforcement, but I don't know if it was directly with Las Vegas. However, where the immunity deal and what the prosecution in this case, and this is another big point, are trying to argue why that deal is null and void or doesn't apply is because he's the one that broke the agreement by giving interviews with Vlad, doing a book deal, just sitting down talking about it over and over again. Why are you doing this? You know, why are they doing this? Why are you talking about this now? So it's a mixed feeling for me because, yeah, you want to see justice be brought. We obviously want to know what happened to this young man because Tupac was a young man. He was only 24, 25 years old at the time of his death, and he had a lot of life to live. He was basically in the prime of his career. His career had really just started taking off. He started to become this global icon, and he was the son of a Black Panther, of a Keene. He was always being targeted by government officials, by law enforcement. That charge that he did in New York for, and I can't say the word on here, but involving battery, let's just say. There's questions about that because I saw the little girl on Vlad giving her interview and heard the story and how that was a setup because he wasn't even involved, and the guys who were there in the same hotel room, they didn't get prosecuted. It was just Tupac. So that was interesting. They cut some type of agreement with the state, and they just were basically trying to go after the man. And even his sentencing, the judge was not very fair, I think, especially with him being a first offender with that. But neither to here nor there. The death of Tupac Shakur was a terrible tragedy for a lot of young people, a terrible tragedy for the hip hop community, for the music world, but people in general who appreciated his work because, again, he had, I still think, a lot to give to the world. And certainly his mother felt the loss of a child, something she could never get back. And I'm going to be paying attention to this. Now, of course, you're innocent till proven guilty. I believe all people are innocent until proven guilty, and it's the job of the state to prove that. I don't know if they're able to prove all, if they're going to be able to prove all of that because of the length of time and the fact that certain key people aren't there. But they do have his statements that I'm sure they're going to play for the jury, and jury selection is still ongoing. Picking a jury is actually where the trial, that's the biggest battle. If you're a defense attorney and you can get a great jury, you got a chance of an acquittal. Of course, you never know what's going to happen, but that's really where trials begin. Like I said before with the Carmelo Anthony thing, that whole thing set up started with jury selection being in that county where the incident occurred, and it just went from there. So, what say you, fam? What do y'all think will happen? You can leave a comment in the description. I just wanted to come on here briefly and talk with you all uh, and see what you had to say. I haven't been on in a while. Of course, you know, I've been dealing with a lot. Shout out to Beverly White, Mickey Major, uh, Vanessa Diaz. We were talking about Tupac Shakur's this murder trial going on right now in Las Vegas with Keefe D, Dwayne Davis, who is being accused of basically conspiracy to murder. That's essentially what he's charged with. And here's another thing. According to even his own words, he was present at the scene and was there with the nephew and orchestrate, and he knew in detail about the guns and so forth that was involved and how they got rid of it. So a lot of stuff he's saying is bone chilling and incriminating, to say the least, regardless of his intentions. And his intentions could have been for money, but there's not enough money in the world worth your freedom, because you can have all the money in the world. You can't do anything if you can't spend it. So good luck spending that in the commissary in jail. He's not going to be able to do that. But we'll see what happens. And, you know, I'm going to keep monitoring this story as it goes. What do y'all say, ladies and gentlemen? Do y'all think that this is a setup? Do you think other individuals involved? Leave a comment. It was good talking with y'all. I hadn't been on here in a while. So I'll talk to y'all later. Be loved, be safe, and be blessed. And stay cool. I'll holla. Peace. Hold on. I don't do this often from the phone, so end here. Yeah, okay. I'm ending the stream, guys, but we'll be in touch, all right?